The year was 2847, and humanity was dying. Commander Lisa Hartwell stood on the bridge of her research vessel, the Distant Hope, and watched the stars through the observation window. Those same stars that humans had dreamed about for thousands of years now belonged to someone else. The Victari Dominion had been conquering human colonies for 30 years. They were tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like dying embers. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were stronger. Their armies were endless. Lisa had lost count of how many human worlds had fallen. She had stopped counting after her home colony burned. Her husband and 2 children had been on that world. She had watched from orbit as Victari ships turned the surface to glass. Now she led a small crew on a desperate mission. They had traveled to Earth, the abandoned birthplace of humanity. No one had lived there for 200 years. The planet was too damaged, too empty, too haunted by memories of wars long finished. But old records spoke of secret military facilities hidden beneath the ice. Weapons from a darker time. Things that might help humanity survive. "Commander, we found something." The voice belonged to Dr. Kevin Marsh, her chief medical officer. He was a thin man with kind eyes and steady hands. Lisa trusted him more than anyone else on the ship. She followed him through the frozen tunnels they had discovered beneath the Arctic ice. The walls were made of metal that still gleamed after centuries. Whatever power source kept this place running had outlasted human civilization on Earth. The chamber at the end of the tunnel made Lisa stop breathing. Rows of glass pods lined the walls, each one designed to hold a human body in frozen sleep. Most of the pods were dark and cracked. The bodies inside had turned to dust long ago. But one pod still glowed with soft blue light. One pod still showed vital signs on its display screen. "He's been frozen for over 700 years, Kevin said quietly. "The file calls him Asset 7. He was part of something called Project Prometheus." Lisa moved closer to the pod. The man inside looked young, maybe 30 years old. He was tall and muscular, with dark hair cut short. His face was calm, peaceful even. He looked like he was simply sleeping. "What was Project Prometheus?" Lisa asked. Kevin pulled up the old files on his tablet. His face grew pale as he read. "It was a super soldier program from the Gene Wars, the 22nd century. They modified humans at the genetic level, made them faster, stronger, smarter than anything that came before or after." He paused. "The file says there were 12 of them. When the wars ended, 11 were terminated. They were considered too dangerous to exist. And this one, frozen, kept as insurance against future threats to humanity." Kevin looked up at her. "Commander, the modifications listed here shouldn't be possible. Modern super soldiers are nothing compared to this. He's not just enhanced. He's something else entirely." Lisa read the warning at the bottom of the file. Red letters that had been sitting in the dark for 7 centuries. "Do not wake without proper containment protocols. Asset is extremely dangerous." Her communicator buzzed. The voice of her pilot, a young woman named Amy Grant, came through with barely controlled panic. "Commander, we have contacts. 3 Victari warships just entered the system. They'll be in weapons range within 2 hours." Lisa closed her eyes. The Victari had found them. Of course they had. They always found the humans eventually. The Distant Hope was a research vessel, not a warship. It had minimal weapons and thin shields. Against 3 Victari cruisers, they would last maybe 5 minutes. She looked at the frozen man in the pod, at the warning that glowed red on the screen, at the words, "extremely dangerous." "Kevin, can you wake him up?" The doctor stared at her. "Commander, we don't know what he'll do. We don't have containment protocols. We don't have any way to control him if he becomes hostile. We have 3 enemy warships coming to kill us, Lisa said. We have no weapons that can stop them. We have a crew of 42 people who will be dead or enslaved in 2 hours. She put her hand on the cold glass of the pod. This man was built to fight humanity's wars. Maybe it's time he fought one more. Kevin was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and began working on the revival sequence. The process took 20 minutes. Lisa watched as the blue light inside the pod shifted to green. Frost melted from the glass. The vital signs on the display grew stronger and faster. The man's fingers twitched. His eyes moved beneath closed lids. Then those eyes opened. They were pale gray, almost silver, and they moved across the room with frightening speed. Lisa had the strange feeling that he had assessed every threat, every exit, every weapon within seconds of waking. When those eyes finally settled on her, she felt like prey. The pod hissed open. The man sat up slowly, carefully. He looked down at his own hands as if checking to make sure they still worked. What year is it? His voice was rough from centuries of silence. 2847, Lisa answered. He nodded as if this was expected. No shock, no grief, no questions about a world that had moved on without him. Who are we fighting? Lisa blinked. What? You woke me up. That means something threatened humanity badly enough to risk releasing me. Those gray eyes studied her face. So who are we fighting? She told him about the Vectari, about the 30 years of war, about the colonies that had burned and the billions who had died, about the 3 warships that were coming to kill them right now. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he simply nodded again and stood up. He was tall, taller than she had expected. He moved with a grace that seemed wrong for a man who had just spent 7 centuries frozen. My name is Daniel Cole, he said. Show me everything you have on these aliens. Every battle, every defeat, every piece of information about how they think and fight. We only have 2 hours before they reach us. Daniel Cole smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had just spotted sheep. That's more time than I need. Daniel Cole sat in the ship's small library and consumed 700 years of human history in under 3 hours. Dr. Kevin Marsh watched from the doorway, his medical scanner tracking the super soldier's vital signs. What he saw made no sense. Daniel's heart rate stayed perfectly steady at 60 beats per minute. His brain activity showed patterns Kevin had never seen before. Multiple regions firing at once in ways that should have caused seizures, but instead seemed to indicate parallel processing. The man wasn't just reading the information. He was absorbing it, analyzing it, building something with it inside his mind. The rest of the crew kept their distance. They had heard the stories about the gene wars, about the monsters that humanity had created to fight itself. They watched Daniel through the library windows like zoo visitors watching a predator in its cage. Lisa Hartwell entered the library and sat across from him. She had made her choice when she woke him up. Now she had to live with it. The Vitari ships will be here in 90 minutes, she said. Daniel didn't look up from the screen. I know. I've been tracking their approach through your sensor data. You have access to our sensors? I have access to everything on this ship. Now he did look up, and those gray eyes held no apology. Your security systems were designed to keep out modern threats. I'm not modern. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had released something she couldn't control. But what choice did she have? What have you learned about the Vectari? Daniel leaned back in his chair. They're impressive. Advanced technology, disciplined military structure, efficient conquest methodology. They've studied their enemies and developed counters for every human tactic. They expect humans to fight a certain way, and humans keep proving them right. What do you mean? Your species has become civilized, Daniel said. The word sounded like an insult coming from him. You fight with rules. You retreat when outnumbered. You surrender when defeat seems certain. You value survival over victory." He paused. "The Vectari have learned that humans are predictable. Push them hard enough and they break." Lisa thought about all the battles humanity had lost. All the commanders who had made the logical choice to preserve their crews. All the colonies that had surrendered to avoid destruction. She had always seen these as reasonable decisions. Now she wondered if they had taught the enemy exactly how to beat them. What would you do differently? Daniel smiled that wolf smile again. "I wouldn't fight like prey. I would fight like a predator." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Your enemies have never faced something they couldn't predict. They've never been hunted. They've never known fear. You think you can make them afraid? I know I can. He turned back to face her. But first, I need you to trust me. I need access to your ship systems. Full access. The ability to modify weapons, engines, sensors, everything. Lisa hesitated. This was the moment she had been dreading. Giving a 700-year-old weapon complete control of her ship meant giving up any power she had over the situation. If he wanted to kill them all, there would be nothing she could do to stop him. But she had seen the files. She knew what the Vectari did to prisoners. The women were used as breeding stock for experiments. The men were worked to death in mining camps. The children were taken and raised to serve the Dominion. Death would be a mercy compared to capture. "Why should I trust you?" she asked quietly. Daniel considered the question. "You shouldn't. Trust is for people who understand each other. You don't understand me. You can't understand me. I was built to be a weapon, and weapons don't care about trust." That's not exactly reassuring. No, but here's what I can tell you. He moved closer, and Lisa forced herself not to step back. I was frozen because my creators feared what I might do to humanity. They were right to fear me. I am dangerous. I am capable of terrible things. But I was also created with one absolute purpose: to protect human beings from extinction-level threats. He placed his hand over his heart. That purpose is burned into every cell of my body. I cannot betray it any more than you can choose to stop breathing. The Vectari are an extinction-level threat. They will keep killing humans until none are left. So as long as they exist, we are allies. Lisa stared at him for a long moment. She thought about her dead husband, her dead children, the burning world she had left behind. "Do it," she said. "Take control of whatever you need." Daniel nodded and walked to the main console. His fingers moved across the controls faster than Lisa could follow. Screens flickered. Systems rebooted. Warning lights flashed and then went dark as he overrode safety protocols. "What are you doing?" Kevin asked from the doorway. "Your ship has capabilities that your engineers never discovered," Daniel said without looking up. "Hidden functions in the code. Emergency weapons protocols that were locked away centuries ago. I'm unlocking them." The lights on the bridge changed from white to red. The hum of the engines shifted to a higher pitch. On the sensor screen, the three approaching Vectari ships continued their steady approach, unaware that anything had changed. "They're scanning us," Amy reported from the pilot's seat. "Standard threat assessment. They probably think we're just a research vessel." "Possibly first vessel." "Let them think that," Daniel said. "In 30 minutes, I'm going to turn off every emission from this ship. We're going to go dark. No engines, no sensors, no life support signatures. As far as their equipment is concerned, we'll be a dead rock floating in space. And then?" Daniel turned to look at the crew that had gathered on the bridge. Scientists, doctors, engineers. Civilians who had never seen real combat. They were terrified of him. He could see it in their eyes, smell it in their sweat. Good. Fear meant they understood what he was. Then I'm going to teach these aliens what it means to be prey. The Vectari fleet commander was named Varix, and she had conquered 23 human worlds in her career. She knew humans better than most of her species. She knew they were soft, emotional creatures who valued individual lives over strategic victory. She knew they would fight hard when cornered, but would eventually break if pressed long enough. She knew they feared death. When her 3 cruisers entered the system and detected the small human research vessel, she felt nothing but boredom. This would be quick. The humans would try to run, fail, and then surrender. Her soldiers would board the ship, take the crew as prisoners, and strip the vessel for any useful technology. Another routine victory dot, then the human ship disappeared. What happened? Varix demanded. Her forearms gripped the command chair as she stared at the empty sensor display. Unknown, Commander. Her sensor officer's voice was confused. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. No explosion detected. No jump signature. They simply vanished. Varix felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Uncertainty. Human ships didn't vanish. Human ships ran or fought or surrendered. They didn't become ghosts. Expand the search pattern. They're hiding somehow. Find them. For the next hour, her 3 cruisers swept the system. They found nothing. The human ship had become invisible to every sensor they possessed. Varix ordered her ships to hold position and wait. The humans would have to move eventually. They would need power, life support, something that would give them away. She didn't know that Daniel Cole had put the entire crew into emergency suits and shut down every system on the ship. The distant hope drifted through space like a corpse. Cold and dead and waiting. Daniel floated in the cargo bay, watching the Vectari ships through a small viewport. He had studied their sensor technology during his research session. He knew exactly what they could detect and what they couldn't. More importantly, he knew how their commanders thought. They're holding position, Lisa said through the suit's radio. She floated beside him, her face pale behind her helmet. They're waiting for us to make a mistake, Daniel replied. Standard predator behavior. Stay still, conserve energy, let the prey reveal itself. He smiled in the darkness. They don't realize they're not the predators anymore. He pushed off from the wall and floated to the engineering section. The crew watched him pass with wide, frightened eyes. He had explained his plan to them, and they hadn't understood most of it. They only understood that their lives now depended on a monster from their species. Past. Daniel reached the engineering console and began entering commands. The ship wouldn't power up. That would give them away. Instead, he activated something else. Something that the original designers had hidden in the ship's code for emergencies that were never supposed to happen. What is that? Kevin asked, watching lights blink on consoles that hadn't been active since the ship was built. A weapon, Daniel said. Your research vessel was designed during wartime. The builders knew it might need to defend itself. They included certain surprises. Hidden panels opened in the hull of the distant Hope. Weapons that had never been fired slid into position. Not the small defensive guns that the crew knew about. These were military-grade missiles with stealth coatings, designed to be invisible to sensors until they were too close to stop. Daniel calculated trajectories in his head. 3 ships. 9 missiles. He would save 6 for insurance. On my command, he said quietly, we're going to wake up. But only for 3 seconds. That's all the time we'll need. The crew braced themselves. Lisa gripped the support beam and tried to control her breathing. She had been in battles before, but nothing like this. She was putting her life in the hands of a creature that had been built to kill. Now, the distant Hope came alive in an instant. Power surged through the systems. Missiles launched from hidden tubes, accelerating toward the 3 Vectari cruisers. Sensor data flooded in, updating Daniel's mental picture of the battlefield. Then everything went dark again. 3 seconds. Just as he had promised, the Vektari never saw the missiles coming. Their sensors detected the brief flash of the human ship's power signature, but before they could react, impacts tore through their hulls. Daniel had targeted their sensor arrays first. In one volley, he blinded all 3 ships. Varric screamed orders as her bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Damage reports flooded in. They couldn't see. They couldn't track the enemy. They were fighting in the dark. "Return fire," she commanded. "Fire in the direction of that power signature." Her weapons officers obeyed, but they were shooting at empty space. Daniel had already repositioned the distant hope, using a tiny burst of thrust to drift to a new location. The Vektari guns tore through the void where the human ship used to be docked. Daniel watched from his new position and felt something like satisfaction. This was what he had been created for. Not the clean battles that modern humans fought. Not the honorable exchanges of fire between equals. This was hunting. This was terror. He waited another hour, letting the Vektari crews grow nervous. They couldn't see. They couldn't know where the next attack would come from. They started making mistakes, firing at shadows, turning on each other with accusations and blame. Then Daniel struck again. This time, he targeted their weapons. More invisible missiles, more precise damage. The Vektari ships still floated, but they couldn't fight back. They were deaf, blind, and toothless. Varric sat in her command chair and felt something she had never felt toward humans before. Fear. Real fear. Whatever was hunting her ships wasn't fighting like any human she had ever encountered. It was patient, precise, and completely without mercy. Daniel's voice came through her communication system, speaking perfect Vektari that he had learned in 3 hours. "Run home. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that humanity just woke up." Then he destroyed her ships, one by one, leaving her escape pod as the only survivor. She would carry his message back to the Dominion. She would tell them about the ghost that hunted in the dark. The war had just changed, and the Vektari didn't even know it yet. Word spread through the human colonies like fire through dry grass. Something had destroyed 3 Vektari warships. Something had sent a fleet commander fleeing in an escape pod. Something had emerged from old Earth, from the frozen graves of the Gene Wars, and it was hunting aliens. Admiral Patricia Webb received the reports at her command station near the front lines. She was an old woman with silver hair and scars on her face from battles she had barely survived. She had fought the Vektari for 20 years. She had lost more friends than she could count. And now she was looking at sensor data that she couldn't explain. A single human destroyed 3 cruisers? She asked her intelligence officer. "That's what the survivor claims, Admiral." She calls him the Ghost of Soul. She says he spoke perfect Vektari and moved like nothing she had ever seen. Patricia studied the files that Commander Hartwell had transmitted. Project Prometheus. Super soldiers from a darker time. A weapon that humanity had been too afraid to use against itself. "I want him brought in," she said. "I want to understand what we're dealing with before we deploy him." But Daniel Cole had other plans. He disappeared from the distant hub during a supply stop at a refugee station. Lisa searched for him, but he was gone, vanished into the crowds of displaced humans who filled the station's corridors. She found a note on her personal terminal. "I work better alone." Watch the news. 2 days later, a Vektari supply depot exploded. It was a massive facility, 20 kilometers across, filled with weapons and food and fuel for the Dominion's war machine. The explosion lit up the sky of the colony below, and millions of humans watched from the surface as their enemies' resources burned. 3 days after that, a communications array went silent. The Vektari used it to coordinate their fleet movements across the sector. Without it, Their ships began making mistakes, arriving at the wrong coordinates, missing scheduled operations. A week later, the personal flagship of a military governor was found drifting in space. The crew was dead. The governor was missing. A message had been carved into the bridge walls in the Vectari language. "We are coming." The Dominion began to panic. They called him the Ghost of Soul, and they couldn't understand what he was. Their analysts argued about whether he was a human, an artificial intelligence, or some kind of new weapon. They increased security around their facilities. They doubled the guards on their ships. They began traveling in larger groups for protection. None of it helped. Daniel struck when they least expected it. He stole ships and weapons. He recruited human prisoners from labor camps, teaching them how to fight like predators instead of prey. He established hidden bases in asteroid fields and abandoned stations. He built a network of shadows that the Vectari couldn't see or understand. Lisa tracked his movements from afar. She had returned to Admiral Webb's command, but she kept her own files on Daniel's activities. She was starting to understand his strategy. "He's not trying to win through force," she explained to the Admiral one evening. "He's trying to break their spirit." Patricia looked at the map of Vectari space. Red markers showed Daniel's attacks, scattered across the sector in what seemed like random patterns. But Lisa had found the connection. "Every attack is designed to create fear," Lisa continued. "He destroys their supplies so they feel hungry. He cuts their communications so they feel isolated. He kills their leaders so they feel leaderless. He's not fighting a military campaign. He's waging psychological war." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "And it's working." It was true. For the first time in 30 years, the Vectari advance had slowed. Their commanders were pulling resources from frontline conquests to protect their rear areas. Ships that should have been attacking human worlds were instead guarding supply lines. The Dominion was learning what it felt like to be afraid. Daniel continued his work in the shadows. He taught small groups of humans his philosophy, not his genetic enhancements, but his way of thinking. How to be patient. How to be ruthless. How to make every attack count. "Your enemies expect you to fight fair," he told a group of former prisoners in a hidden cave on a conquered moon. "They expect you to announce yourselves, to give them a chance to surrender, to follow rules. Stop doing that." A young man raised his hand. His name was Eric, and he had lost his entire family to the Vectari. "But if we fight without rules, what makes us different from them?" Daniel looked at him with those gray eyes that never seemed to warm. "Nothing. And that's the point. Right now, the Vectari believe they're superior to humans. They believe they can do whatever they want to your species because you're too civilized to stop them. You need to show them they're wrong." He picked up a piece of metal from the ground and held it up. "This war isn't about who's more moral. It's about survival. The Vectari will keep killing humans until you make them stop. The only language they understand is pain." Eric nodded slowly. The other prisoners nodded with him. They had seen what the Vectari did to their worlds, their families, their futures. They were ready to become something new. Within months, Daniel had created dozens of cells across Vectari space. Small groups of humans who struck from the shadows and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The Ghost of Soul had become a legend, and that legend was spreading. Admiral Webb received a message on her private channel. It contained coordinates and a simple sentence: "I need a fleet. They're coming." She looked at the coordinates. They pointed to an empty system near the edge of Vectari territory. A place with no planets, no stations, no strategic value. But Daniel Cole didn't do anything without reason. She began assembling her ships. The Vectari High Command made its decision in a great hall on their homeworld. 47 warships would be committed to destroying the Ghost of Soul. It was the largest fleet they had assembled since the war began. It would sweep through the sector, follow his trail, and end the threat once and for all. Fleet Commander Torak was given command of the operation. He was old and experienced, a veteran of 200 conquests. He did not believe in ghosts. He believed in superior firepower and overwhelming numbers. Whatever this human was, he would die like any other dot. The fleet tracked Daniel's last known position to an empty system at the edge of their territory. There was nothing there except rocks and dust. The perfect place for an ambush. Torak was careful. He ordered his ships to spread out, to watch each other's blind spots, to prepare for anything. His sensor officers scanned every asteroid, every debris field, every shadow. They found nothing dangerous. Then they found Daniel. He was standing on the hull of a captured destroyer, visible to their sensors, making no effort to hide. Just one human in a suit, floating in the vacuum of space, looking at 47 warships with the calm expression of someone who had already won. Torak felt the wrongness of it immediately. This was too easy. The Ghost of Soul had never allowed himself to be seen before. Every attack had come from darkness, from silence, from places the Victari couldn't predict. Why would he reveal himself now? All ships, hold position, Torak ordered. Scan the surrounding area. Look for traps. His sensor officers worked frantically. They scanned the asteroids and found nothing. They scanned the empty space and found nothing. They scanned Daniel's captured destroyer and found it almost empty of power. Barely functional. But Torak couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something. "Commander," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the human. Put it through." Daniel Cole's face appeared on the screen. He was smiling, and Torak realized he had never seen a human smile like that before. It wasn't the nervous smile of fear or the fake smile of diplomacy. It was the smile of a predator that had caught its prey. "You came," Daniel said in perfect Victari. "I was hoping you would." "You've been running from us for months," Torak replied. "Now you want to talk?" "I wasn't running. I was hurting." Daniel's smile grew wider. "Every attack I made was designed to create a specific response. I struck your supplies so you would guard your supplies. I cut your communications so you would fear isolation. I killed your leaders so you would want revenge. And I let your survivor escape so she would tell you exactly where to find me." Torak felt cold despite the warmth of his bridge. "You wanted us to come here. I needed you to come here. All of you. Every ship that might have been protecting your colonies. Every commander who might have made smart decisions. I needed you in this empty system, surrounded by nothing but rocks and dust." The sensor officer spoke up, her voice trembling. "Commander, I'm detecting power signatures in the asteroid field. Hundreds of them. They weren't there before." Daniel continued speaking. "For the past 6 months, I've been seeding this system with weapons. Mining charges modified for ship-to-ship combat. Drone vessels with basic targeting systems. Missiles hidden inside asteroids. All of them invisible to your sensors until I activated them just now." Torak looked at his tactical display. Red dots were appearing everywhere, surrounding his fleet like a net. 47 warships, and they were surrounded by thousands of weapons. "You can't destroy us all," Torak said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't have to destroy you all. I just have to hurt you badly enough to make my point." Daniel's expression changed, becoming serious. "But I'd prefer not to. I have a better idea." He broadcast to every ship in the Victari fleet, to every soldier and officer who could hear his voice. "I am the first of my kind, but I am not the last. During the Gene Wars, humanity created 12 super soldiers like me. 11 were terminated. I was frozen, but others were hidden. On every world you've conquered, on every colony you've burned, there are bunkers you never found." frozen soldiers waiting to be awakened. Torak's blood ran cold. If there were more creatures like this one, right now, I am the only one hunting you. But if you don't leave human space, I will wake my siblings. I will teach every human survivor what I know. I will turn this war into a nightmare that lasts 1,000 years. Your great-grandchildren will check under their beds for humans before they sleep. The fleet was silent. 47 ships, thousands of soldiers, and none of them spoke. Or, Daniel said, you can leave. Withdraw from all human territory. Return to your own space. Never come back. If you do this, I will return to my frozen sleep, and you will never see me again. Torak wanted to fight. Every instinct told him to attack, to destroy this single human who dared threaten the Dominion. But he looked at the weapons surrounding his fleet. He thought about the months of terror, the attacks from shadows, the commanders who had died without ever seeing their killer. He imagined facing not one of these creatures, but 12, or 100, or a species of billions who had learned to fight like predators. He made his decision. All ships, reverse course. We're going home. The Victari fleet withdrew. 47 warships turned and left the system, carrying their fear back to the Dominion. Within a year, every Victari ship had pulled back from human space. They began building defenses on their core worlds, preparing for an invasion that would never come. Daniel Cole had lied. There were no other super soldiers. There were no hidden bunkers. He was the last of his kind, alone in a universe that had moved on without him. But the Victari didn't know that, and they never would. Commander Lisa Hartwell stood on the observation deck of a space station, watching human ships return to worlds that had been conquered for decades. Families were reuniting. Colonies were being rebuilt. Humanity was healing. She received a message on her private channel. It contained coordinates to a hidden facility beneath the ice of a moon she had never heard of. The message was simple: for the next time humanity forgets how to bare its teeth. She never told anyone about it. Some weapons were too important to share. Some secrets were too dangerous to reveal. And some monsters were worth keeping in the darkness, waiting for the day they might be needed again. Daniel Cole returned to his frozen sleep in a bunker that no one would ever find. He dreamed of nothing, felt nothing, knew nothing. But somewhere in the back of his engineered mind, a part of him stayed alert, watching, waiting, ready to wake up if humanity ever faced extinction again. The Victari told stories about him for generations. The ghost of soul, the human who hunted in the dark, the monster who had taught an empire what it meant to be afraid. They never tried to conquer humanity again. They never forgot the lesson they had learned. Some species were too dangerous to fight. Some prey was actually the predator. And sometimes, the scariest thing in the universe was a single human who had nothing left to lose.